When Marcus stood on my porch that Tuesday morning, holding the hand of a little girl who had his eyes, I felt the ground shift beneath me. It had been 6 years since I'd seen him. 6 years since I'd signed those divorce papers with shaking hands. My lawyer's pen scratched across the bottom line while Marcus sat silent across the table, unable to meet my gaze. 6 years since I'd packed up 15 years of marriage into cardboard boxes and started over in this small rental house on Maple Street. And now here he was, looking older, grayer at the temples, lines around his mouth I didn't remember, with a child, a little girl, maybe 4 or 5 years old, wearing a yellow sundress and white sandals, her hair in 2 neat braids. "Hello, Diana," he said quietly. I couldn't speak. My hand gripped the doorframe so tight my knuckles went white. The child looked up at me with those unmistakable brown eyes, Marcus's eyes, the same warm amber color that used to make my heart skip when we were young. She smiled shyly, revealing a gap where her front tooth should be. "Can we talk?" Marcus asked. "Please." I know I have no right to ask, but no, I heard myself say. You don't. But I didn't close the door. I should have. God knows I should have slammed it right in his face and locked every bolt. Instead, I stood there, frozen, staring at this impossible scene on my doorstep. "Diana, this is Emma," Marcus said, his voice cracking slightly. "She's my daughter." At our doorstep, I wanted to correct him. Except it wasn't anymore. Nothing was ours anymore. He'd made sure of that when he'd walked away from our marriage without a backward glance, moved 3 states over, and stopped returning my calls. I'd spent the first year after the divorce in a fog. My sister Rochelle had moved in with me for 3 months, making sure I ate, making sure I got out of bed, making sure I didn't fall completely apart. I'd worked my shifts at the hospital in a daze, going through the motions of checking vitals and updating charts while my own heart felt like it had stopped beating. By the 2nd year, I'd started to breathe again, started to build something new. I'd gotten promoted to charge nurse. I'd planted tomatoes in the backyard. I'd learned to cook for one without crying over the empty chair across from me. By year 6, I'd finally stopped checking my phone hoping to see his name. And now this. "How old is she?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Marcus shifted his weight, looking down. 5. She'll be 6 in November. The math hit me like cold water. 5 years old, which meant you had her a year after we divorced, I said flatly. "Diana, please, can we come in? Just for a few minutes. I need to explain." Every instinct screamed at me to say no, to protect myself, to send him away before he could hurt me again. But something about the way Emma was looking at me, curious but cautious, like a little bird deciding whether to trust an outstretched hand, made me step back. 10 minutes, I said. They came inside, and I noticed how Marcus guided Emma gently, his hand on her small shoulder. The way he helped her up onto my couch, made sure she was comfortable. The tenderness in his movements. When has Marcus ever been tender? I sat across from them in the armchair, my hands folded in my lap to keep them from shaking. The living room suddenly felt too small, too warm. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the silence. Emma swung her legs, her sandals not quite reaching the floor. She looked around the room with wide eyes, taking in my bookshelves, the photos. On the mantel, the African violet in the window that was finally blooming again after years of struggling. "Would you like some water, sweetie?" I heard myself ask her. She nodded. "Yes, please, ma'am." Ma'am, someone had taught her manners. I went to the kitchen, grateful for the excuse to turn away, to breathe. My hands trembled as I filled a glass with cold water from the pitcher in the refrigerator. Through the doorway, I could hear Marcus speaking softly to Emma, telling her to sit still, to be patient. When I returned, Emma took the glass with both hands and drank carefully, watching me over the rim. "Thank you," she said when she finished. "You're welcome." I sat back down and looked at Marcus. Really looked at him. He'd aged more than 6 years. There was a weariness in his face, a weight I didn't remember seeing even in our worst days. "Talk," I said. He took a deep breath. "I don't know where to start." "Try the beginning. Try the part where you had a child with someone else barely a year after our marriage ended." It wasn't like that. His voice was hoarse. "Diana, her mother, Emma's mother, she died 8 months ago. Cancer. It was fast and terrible and—" He stopped, pressing his fingers to his eyes. Emma had gone very still beside him, staring down at her hands. The air in the room changed. I felt my anger waver, just slightly, replaced by something more complicated. "I'm sorry," I said quietly, and I meant it. Whatever had happened between Marcus and me, a child losing her mother was a tragedy beyond our broken marriage. Marcus nodded, not looking up. "Her name was Sarah. We met about 8 months after the divorce. I wasn't looking for anything. I was a mess, Diana. I was drinking too much, barely keeping my job. She was a teacher at the school where I was doing maintenance work. She was kind to me when I didn't deserve kindness from anyone." I watched Emma, who was tracing patterns on the fabric of my couch with one small finger. She wasn't crying, but there was something ancient in her stillness, the way children look when they've learned too young that the world can take things away. "We didn't plan for Emma," Marcus continued. "Sarah found out she was pregnant and told me she was keeping the baby whether I stayed or not. And something about that, about her strength, about the choice she was making, it woke me up. I got sober. I got a better job. I tried to be the man she deserved, the father Emma deserved. And you never thought to tell me?" The question came out sharper than I intended. 15 years of marriage, Marcus. 15 years, and you just vanished. I didn't even know if you were alive or dead half the time. "I know." His voice broke. I was ashamed of how I'd failed you, of how I'd let everything fall apart. I thought the kindest thing I could do was just let you move on, let you forget me. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Forget you? Marcus, I spent 2 years in therapy trying to understand what I did wrong, what I could have done differently. You didn't do anything wrong." He finally looked at me, and I saw tears in his eyes. "It was all me, Diana. The drinking, the gambling, the debts I hid from you. You tried to save me, and I resented you for it. I pushed you away because I couldn't stand the disappointment in your eyes every time I came home drunk, or every time another credit card declined." The memories came flooding back. The fights, the broken promises. The night I'd found him passed out in his truck in the driveway, the engine still running. The final straw when he'd taken out a loan against our house without telling me, and we'd nearly lost everything. "Why are you here now?" I asked. "After all this time, why show up on my doorstep?" Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. His hands were shaking as he held it out to me. "Sarah made me promise," he said, "before she died. She made me promise that if anything ever happened to her, I'd make things right. With you, with everyone I'd hurt." I didn't take the envelope. "I don't understand. She knew about you, about our marriage, about how it ended. I never lied to her about my past. And she told me that a man who runs from his mistakes will keep running his whole life. That Emma deserved a father who could face his demons." Emma looked up at the sound of her name. "Mama said we should always tell the truth," she said softly, "even when it's hard." The simple wisdom of it, delivered in that small, serious voice, made my throat tight. Marcus set the envelope on the coffee table between us. "Sarah also knew she was sick before the diagnosis. She had symptoms for months, but kept putting off the doctor because she didn't have good insurance. When they finally caught it, it had already spread. She had maybe 6 months from diagnosis to... He couldn't finish. "I'm so sorry," I whispered again. She spent those last months getting everything in order, making videos for Emma's future birthdays, writing letters, and making me promise that I'd do the hard things I'd been avoiding. "This is the hardest one." He gestured to the envelope. "She wrote you a letter. I don't know what it says. She sealed it before I could read it. But she wanted you to have it." I stared at the envelope like it might burn me. White paper, my name written in unfamiliar handwriting. Neat. Teacher's cursive. "I don't know what you want from me, Marcus." "Nothing," he said quickly. "I'm not here to ask for anything. I know I have no right." But Sarah believed in second chances, in forgiveness, in making peace with the past, and she made me promise I'd at least try. Try what? To apologize, to let you know that none of it was your fault, to tell you that you deserved better than what I gave you. His voice was raw now, tears running down his face. And to ask, not for my sake, but for Emma's, if maybe, someday, you could find it in your heart to forgive me. Don't forget. I know I can't ask for that. But forgive me. Let go of the anger. For your own peace, not mine. I looked at Emma again. She was watching her father cry with that same terrible stillness, like she'd seen it before and learned that sometimes grown-ups just needed to cry. "Does she have anyone else?" I asked. "Family?" Marcus shook his head. "Sarah's parents passed years ago. She was an only child. It's just us, me and Emma." The clock ticked. Outside, I heard Mrs. Chen's dog barking 3 doors down. The normal sounds of a Wednesday morning in a neighborhood that didn't know my whole world had just tilted sideways. I reached for the envelope. The paper felt heavier than it should have. I held it in my lap, running my thumb along the sealed edge, not quite ready to open it. "Emma, honey," I said gently, "would you like to see my backyard? I have a bird feeder, and sometimes the cardinals come to visit." Her eyes lit up just a little. "Can I, Daddy?" Marcus nodded. "Stay where Ms. Diana can see you through the window, okay?" I led her to the back door and watched as she stepped carefully onto the patio, her yellow dress bright against the gray morning. She walked slowly toward the bird feeder, her hands clasped behind her back like she was in a museum. When I returned to the living room, Marcus was standing by the window, watching her too. "She's beautiful," I said. "She looks like Sarah." His voice was soft. "Acts like her too. Thoughtful. Careful with people's feelings. Too grown up for 5 years old." I sat down and finally opened the envelope. The letter was 3 pages, written in that same neat handwriting. I took a breath and began to read. "Dear Diana, you don't know me, but I feel like I know you. Marcus has told me about your marriage, not everything, I'm sure, but enough for me to understand that you loved him deeply and that he hurt you in ways that words can't fully capture. I'm writing this letter from my hospice bed. The doctors say I have maybe 2 weeks left, and I need to use whatever time I have to make sure the people I love are taken care of. That includes Emma, obviously, but it also includes Marcus in a different way, and perhaps in a way, it includes you. I know this must sound strange. Why would a dying woman concern herself with her partner's ex-wife? But I've learned something in these past months, watching my life wind down to its final hours. Unfinished business has a weight to it. It sits on your chest. It makes the air harder to breathe. Marcus carries you with him, Diana. Not in a romantic way. Please don't misunderstand. He loves me and I never doubted that. But he carries the guilt of what he did to you, like a stone around his neck. Some nights when he thought I was sleeping, I'd hear him crying in the next room, apologizing to empty air, wishing he could go back and be the man you deserved. I stopped reading, my vision blurring. Through the window, I could see Emma crouched down, examining something in the grass, a caterpillar maybe, or an interesting pebble. the simple curiosity of a child who still found wonder in small things. I wiped my eyes and continued. I'm not asking you to take him back. I'm not asking you to forget what happened, or to pretend the pain wasn't real. But I am asking you to consider forgiveness. Not for his sake. He'll carry his regrets regardless. For yours. I've been a teacher for 12 years, and I've seen what happens when people hold on to anger for too long. It calcifies inside them, hardens into something that changes the shape of who they are. You sound like you were a woman who loved fully and gave generously. I hope you still are. I hope his betrayal didn't steal that from you. Which brings me to Emma. I don't have the right to ask anything of you. You owe us nothing. But I'm going to ask anyway, because I'm desperate, and I'm dying, and I'm terrified of what will happen to my daughter when I'm gone. Marcus is sober now. He's been sober for almost 6 years. He's a good father, patient, present, loving. But he's also alone. His family disowned him years ago over the drinking. He has no siblings, and when I'm gone, Emma will have no one but him. I'm not asking you to be her mother. She has a mother, and she'll carry me in her heart forever. But I'm asking you to consider being someone in her life, an aunt, a friend, a person she can turn to if she needs another adult who cares. Someone who can remind Marcus that he's not alone in raising her. Someone who can tell Emma stories about her father before the drinking, before the mistakes, because I know there was a version of him worth loving, or you wouldn't have married him. I know this is an enormous task. I know I have no right, but I'm a mother running out of time, and I'll use whatever breath I have left to advocate for my child. If you can't do this, I understand, truly. You've already been hurt enough. But if you can find it in yourself to let Marcus apologize, to let him make amends in whatever small way possible, and to consider being a presence in Emma's life, even a distant one, you'd be giving a dying woman peace. Thank you for reading this. Thank you for the years you gave Marcus, even though he squandered them. Thank you for being the kind of person he still speaks about with regret and respect. I hope you've found happiness. I hope you've built a beautiful life, and I hope someday there's room in that life for a little grace. With gratitude and hope, Sarah Mitchell. I folded the letter carefully and set it on the coffee table. My hands were steady now, but my heart was racing. Marcus hadn't moved from the window. She was remarkable, he said quietly. Even at the end, she was thinking about everyone else, making sure everyone would be okay. She sounds like she was, I agreed. I don't expect anything, Marcus said, turning to face me. I just needed to deliver the letter, to apologize in person, to let you know that I'm sorry, Diana. I'm so deeply sorry for every way I failed you. You deserved so much better. Through the window, Emma had found a stick and was drawing patterns in the dirt of my garden bed. The tomato plants I'd carefully staked were starting to produce their last fruits of the season. How are you managing? I asked. With her? With work and childcare and everything? Marcus let out a long breath, his shoulders sagging. Barely. I work construction now. Steady job, good pay. But the hours are long, and I can't always predict when I'll need to stay late. Emma's in kindergarten, but school ends at 3. I've got a neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who watches her most afternoons, but she's 76 and I can't keep imposing forever. He rubbed his face with both hands. Some days I feel like I'm drowning, like I'm one missed payment or one sick day away from everything falling apart. And Emma, she's so brave, so strong, but she has nightmares. She wakes up crying for Sarah. I don't know how to help her through grief when I'm barely holding myself together. I watched Emma through the window. She'd abandoned her stick and was now sitting cross-legged on the grass, looking up at the bird feeder with patient hope. Does she see a counselor? I asked. We've been twice. My insurance covers 6 sessions a year. We've used 4 already. His voice was tight with frustration. I'm trying, Diana. I'm trying so hard to be what she needs. But I'm terrified I'm going to fail her the way I failed you. Something shifted in my chest. Not forgiveness, exactly. Not yet. But something softer than the anger I'd carried for 6 years. You didn't come here just to deliver the letter, I said slowly. You came here hoping for something more. Marcus met my eyes. Sarah thought you might be willing to help. Not financially, he added quickly. I'm not asking for money. But she hoped, that maybe you'd be willing to be in Emma's life somehow. As someone she could talk to. Someone who could give her a woman's perspective as she grows up. Sarah left her videos and letters for every birthday until Emma turns 18, but she knew it wouldn't be enough. She wanted Emma to have someone real. Why me? The question came out sharper than I intended. Of all the people in the world, why would Sarah think I'd want anything to do with the child you had with another woman? Because she read your letters, Marcus said quietly. I froze. What letters? The ones you sent me? In that first year after the divorce. I kept them all. Sarah found them when we moved in together, and I told her she could read them if she wanted. She said they showed her who you really were. Kind, forgiving. Still hoping I'd get better even after I'd destroyed everything. Those letters. I'd forgotten about them. Written late at night when I couldn't sleep. When the empty house felt too quiet. When I still believed somehow that Marcus would wake up and choose to be the man I'd married. Letters full of hope and pain and desperate love. I was pathetic, I said bitterly. You were human, Marcus corrected. And Sarah said anyone who could love that generously, who could keep reaching out even after being hurt. That was someone who understood Grace. Someone who might understand Emma's situation. A little girl who didn't ask for any of this but needs all the love she can get. I looked down at my hands. My wedding ring was long gone, replaced by a simple silver band I'd bought myself on my 50th birthday last year. A promise to myself that I was enough, that I didn't need anyone else to be complete. But here was this child, innocent, motherless, connected to my past in the most complicated way possible. I need to think, I said finally. Of course. Take all the time you need. He pulled a card from his wallet and set it on the table next to Sarah's letter. That's my number. The current address is on the back. We're about 40 minutes from here, closer to the city. If you ever want to reach out, for any reason, I'll answer. We stood there in awkward silence for a moment. I should get her home, Marcus said. It's almost lunchtime, and she gets cranky when her blood sugar drops. I walked to the back door and called out gently, Emma, sweetie. It's time to go. She looked up, disappointed. I haven't seen any red birds yet. They're shy, I told her. They usually come in the afternoon when it's quieter. She stood up, brushing grass off her dress. As she came inside, she paused in front of me. You have a nice house, she said solemnly. It smells like cookies. I smiled despite myself. I baked yesterday. Would you like to take some home? Her face brightened, and she looked at Marcus for permission. He nodded. I went to the kitchen and put 6 chocolate chip cookies in a plastic container, then handed it to Emma. She took it carefully, like it was something precious. Thank you. Ms. Diana, she said. You're welcome, sweetheart. At the door, Marcus turned back. Thank you for hearing me out. I know it wasn't easy. No, I agreed. It wasn't. Emma surprised me by stepping forward and wrapping her small arms around my waist in a brief hug. It was over before I could react, and then she was taking her father's hand, walking down my porch steps. I watched them get into a blue sedan, older model, but clean and well-maintained. Emma waved at me through the window as they pulled away. I stood on my porch for a long time after they left, the morning sun warming my face. Mrs. Chen walked by with her dog and waved. Mr. Patterson was mowing his lawn across the street. Normal life continued while mine felt suspended in this strange space between past and present. I went back inside and picked up Sarah's letter, reading it again. And then a third time. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Emma's face. Those amber eyes so like Marcus's, that gap-toothed smile, the careful way she'd hugged me like she was afraid I might break. At 2 a.m, I got up and made tea. I sat at my kitchen table with Sarah's letter spread in front of me and Marcus's card beside it. By morning, I still hadn't decided anything. I went to work at the hospital in a fog, going through my rounds mechanically. My colleague Janet noticed during our lunch break. You okay? She asked, unwrapping her sandwich. You've been staring at that same chart for 10 minutes. I set down my pen. Janet and I had worked together for 8 years. She'd been there through the divorce, through the worst of it. If anyone would understand, it would be her. Marcus showed up at my house yesterday, I said. Her eyes widened. Your ex, after 6 years of nothing? With his daughter. A 5-year-old daughter. I told her everything. Sarah's death, the letter, the request, Emma's hug. Janet listened without interrupting, which was one of the things I loved about her. When I finished, she sat back in her chair and let out a low whistle. "That's heavy," she said finally. "What are you going to do?" "I have no idea. Part of me wants to throw his card in the trash and pretend yesterday never happened. But then I think about that little girl." "Who's not your responsibility?" Janet cut in gently. "Diana, I love you, but you have a habit of taking care of everyone except yourself. You don't owe Marcus anything, and you definitely don't owe anything to the woman he moved on with." "She's dead, Janet." "I know, and that's tragic. But it doesn't change the fact that you've spent 6 years rebuilding your life. You're finally happy. Why would you invite that complication back in?" It was a fair question, one I'd been asking myself all night. "Because Emma didn't do anything wrong," I said quietly. "She's just a kid who lost her mother. And Sarah, I never met her, but from that letter she sounds like she was a good person. A person who cared about doing the right thing even when she was dying. So what? You're going to play auntie to your ex-husband's kid? Have awkward visits where you pretend everything's fine? Diana, think about what you're signing up for." I picked at my salad. "I know, you're right. It's messy and complicated and probably a terrible idea. But you're going to do it anyway," Janet said, reading my face. "Aren't you?" I didn't answer right away. Through the cafeteria window, I could see the hospital courtyard, where families gathered, where children played while waiting for their parents to finish treatments or surgeries. I watched a little girl, maybe Emma's age, spinning in circles with her arms out, laughing. "I don't know yet," I said finally, "but I can't stop thinking about her." That evening, I did something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out the box from the back of my closet, the one I'd packed away after the divorce, unable to throw it out but unable to look at it either. Inside were the remnants of my marriage. Wedding photos, anniversary cards, the good china we'd received as gifts and never used, and at the bottom, underneath everything else, were the letters I'd mentioned to Marcus. My letters to him, returned unopened, along with a few he'd written to me in the early days when we were still trying. I sat on my bedroom floor and read through them. Young Diana's hopeful words, young Marcus's promises, the slow deterioration of both as the drinking got worse, as the lies piled up, as love turned to resentment and resentment turned to silence. But there were also reminders of who we'd been before it all fell apart. Marcus makes me breakfast on Sunday mornings. The time he'd driven 3 hours in a snowstorm to bring me cold medicine when I had the flu. The way he used to leave notes in my lunch bag, silly jokes, little hearts drawn in the margins. He hadn't always been a bad man. He'd been a sick man, an addicted man, a man drowning who'd pulled me under with him. But according to Sarah's letter, he'd gotten help. He'd gotten sober. He'd become the father Emma needed. Could people really change that much? I picked up my phone and stared at Marcus's card for a long time before finally typing out a message. "This is Diana. I've been thinking about your visit. I'm not making any promises, but I'd like to talk more. Are you free this weekend?" I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The response came within minutes. "Yes. Saturday afternoon? I can come to you, or we can meet somewhere neutral. Whatever you're comfortable with. Thank you for even considering this." We agreed to meet at the coffee shop downtown on Saturday at 2 o'clock. Neutral territory. Public enough to feel safe. Quiet enough to talk. I spent the next 3 days alternating between conviction that I was doing the right thing and certainty that I was making a terrible mistake. Rochelle called on Thursday and I told her what was happening. "Are you insane?" she asked. "Diana, this man nearly destroyed you. And now you're going to let him back into your life?" "Not into my life," I corrected. "I'm just meeting him for coffee. To talk. That's how it starts. Next thing you know, you're babysitting every weekend and attending parent-teacher conferences and emotionally invested in a child who's going to break your heart when Marcus inevitably messes up again. He's been sober for 6 years, Ro. So what? He was sober for 3 months at a time before, remember? Remember all the times he promised things would be different? I did remember. I remembered every broken promise, every relapse. Every morning I'd woken up next to him and wondered if today would be the day he finally chose us over the bottle. "This is different," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it. How? How is it different? Because he has Emma now. A reason bigger than himself to stay sober. And because I paused, trying to find the words. Because I read Sarah's letter and it changed something in me. She was dying, Ro. Dying, and she used her last energy to advocate for forgiveness. For grace. That means something. Rochelle was quiet for a moment. Then she sighed. You've always had too much heart, Diana. It's going to get you hurt again. Maybe, I admitted. But holding on to anger for 6 years hasn't exactly made me happy either. Maybe it's time to try something different. Just promise me you'll be careful, and that you'll call me if things get weird. I promise. Saturday arrived gray and drizzly. I changed my outfit 3 times before settling on jeans and a simple blue sweater. Nothing too formal. Nothing that suggested I was trying too hard. I arrived at the coffee shop 15 minutes early and ordered a chamomile tea, choosing a table by the window where I could watch the street. Marcus arrived exactly at 2, Emma holding his hand. I hadn't expected him to bring her, and something in my chest tightened at the sight of them together. Him shortening his stride to match hers, her looking up at him with complete trust. They spotted me through the window and came inside, shaking rain from their jackets. I hope it's okay I brought Emma, Marcus said as they approached. Mrs. Patterson had a doctor's appointment, and I didn't want to cancel on you. It's fine, I said, and realized I meant it. Emma smiled at me. Hi, Miss Diana. Do they have hot chocolate here? They do. Would you like some? She nodded eagerly. Marcus ordered drinks for both of them while I waited at the table, watching Emma examine the pastries in the display case with serious concentration. When they returned, Emma had a hot chocolate topped with whipped cream, and Marcus had black coffee. Emma climbed into the chair next to me, carefully holding her cup with both hands. So, Marcus said, settling across from us. Thank you for meeting with me. With us. I've been thinking about Sarah's letter, I said, about what she asked. Emma looked up at the sound of her mother's name, her expression shifting to something quieter, more careful. And? Marcus prompted gently. And I don't have an answer yet. This is all very complicated for me, Marcus. 6 years ago, I would have done anything to have you back in my life. Now I've built something new, something stable, and I'm terrified of letting you back in, even peripherally because I hurt you, he finished. And you're afraid I'll do it again. Yes. Emma was watching us both, her hot chocolate forgotten. I could see her processing the tension in the conversation, even if she didn't understand all the words. Can I ask you something? I said to Marcus. And I need you to be completely honest. Anything. Why did you drink? I mean, I know addiction is complicated, but there had to be something. For some reason, it got so bad. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, staring into his coffee. My father was an alcoholic, he said finally. Died when I was 16. Liver failure. I swore I'd never be like him. And then I started having a drink after work to unwind. Then 2 drinks. Then I couldn't get through the day without it. He looked up at me. But the real answer? The deeper answer? I was afraid. Afraid of failing. Afraid of not being good enough. Afraid that you'd wake up one day and realize you'd married a mediocre man with mediocre prospects. So I drank to silence that voice. And the more I drank, the more I became exactly what I was afraid of being. It was the most honest he'd ever been with me. In 15 years of marriage, he'd never said those words. What changed? I asked. Sarah didn't let me hide. When she found out she was pregnant, she told me I had one chance. Get sober and be a father, or walk away completely. No halfway. No promises without action. And then Emma was born, and his voice cracked. I looked at this tiny person who was counting on me, and I knew I couldn't fail her. I went to meetings, got a sponsor, did the work, and I've been sober ever since. Emma reached over and patted her father's hand. It was such a tender gesture, so full of understanding, that I had to look away. What happened to Sarah? I asked quietly. You said it was fast. Ovarian cancer. By the time they found it, it had spread everywhere. She did chemo, but it was too aggressive. She made it 8 months after diagnosis. Emma and I were with her at the end. He looked at his daughter. Emma was so brave. Mama said being brave means being scared but doing the thing anyway. Emma said softly, I reached across the table and covered her small hand with mine. Your mama was right. We sat in silence for a moment, the coffee shop bustling around us, the hiss of the espresso machine, the murmur of other conversations, the rain tapping against the windows. I can't make any promises, I said finally, but I'm willing to try. Slowly. Maybe we could meet once a month? Coffee or lunch? Let Emma and I get to know each other without any pressure or expectations. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. That's more than I hoped for. Thank you, Diana. But I need boundaries, I continued. I'm not a babysitter. I'm not a replacement for Sarah. And if you relapse, if you fall back into old patterns, I'm out of your life, completely. I understand. Emma was looking at me with those amber eyes, hopeful and guarded at the same time. Does this mean we're friends? She asked. Something in my heart cracked open. I think it means we're getting to know each other, I said. And maybe eventually we'll be friends. She smiled, and it was like sunshine breaking through clouds. We finished our drinks and talked about lighter things. Emma's kindergarten class, her favorite books, the cat she wanted to adopt. Marcus told a story about Emma's first day of school, how she'd cried for 10 minutes and then marched into the classroom like she owned the place. Emma blushed and protested that she wasn't a baby anymore. When we left the coffee shop, the rain had stopped. Emma walked between Marcus and me, swinging her arms, chattering about a field trip her class was taking to the zoo next week. Have you ever been to the zoo, Ms. Diana? She asked. Many times, I said. When I was younger, I used to volunteer there during summers. Her eyes went wide. Really? Did you get to touch the animals? Some of them. The ones that were safe to touch? What was your favorite? I thought back to those summers, decades ago now, when I'd been young and full of dreams. The elephants. They're so intelligent and gentle. They remember everything. Emma considered this seriously. Mama used to say I had an elephant's memory, because I never forget things. That sounds like a good thing to have, I said. Sometimes. But sometimes I remember things I wish I could forget. Her voice dropped so low I almost didn't hear her, like Mama being sick. Marcus's hand tightened on her shoulder, but he didn't say anything. I knelt down so I was at Emma's eye level. It's okay to remember the hard things, I told her. They're part of your story, but you also get to remember all the good things about your mama. Her laugh, the way she reads to you, how she makes you feel safe. Those memories are treasures. Emma nodded, her eyes glistening. She used to make up songs, silly ones about whatever we were doing. This is the way we brush our teeth, brush our teeth, brush our teeth like that. That sounds wonderful. Do you sing? Emma asked. Not very well, I admitted. But I used to read stories. I could read you a story sometime if you'd like. Her face brightened. Really? Really. We reached their car, and Marcus opened the back door to help Emma with her booster seat. As he buckled her in, I stood awkwardly on the sidewalk, not quite sure how to end this encounter. Same time next month? Marcus asked when he straightened up. Yes. But Marcus... I waited until he met my eyes. I meant what I said about boundaries. This is fragile. Handle it carefully. I will. I promise. As they drove away, Emma pressed her face to the window and waved. I waved back, standing there long after they'd turned the corner. The next few weeks passed quietly. I went back to my routine, work, grocery shopping, tending my garden as autumn settled in. But something had shifted. I found myself thinking about Emma at odd moments, wondering if she'd enjoyed her zoo trip, hoping Marcus was managing okay with work and childcare. Then, 3 weeks after our coffee meeting, my phone rang at 10 o'clock at night. Marcus's name on the screen made my stomach drop. Hello? Diana. His voice was strained. I'm so sorry to call this late. I didn't know who else. Emma's running a high fever. 103 degrees. I'm taking her to the emergency room, but I'm terrified and I needed to hear a calm voice. You're a nurse. Tell me she's going to be okay. I could hear Emma crying in the background, a pitiful, weak sound. Take a breath, I said, slipping automatically into my professional mode. How long has she had the fever? It spiked about an hour ago. She was fine at dinner, maybe a little warm, but then she woke up crying and she's burning up. Any other symptoms? Rash, stiff neck, difficulty breathing? No rash. She's breathing okay, just crying. Diana, what if— Marcus, listen to me. High fevers are scary, but they're common in kids. You're doing the right thing taking her to the ER. They'll check her out. Probably give her something to bring the fever down. Most likely it's a virus. You really think so? I think you're being a good father by getting her medical attention. Which hospital? St. Mary's. I'll meet you there. Diana, you don't have to. I'm already getting my keys. I'll see you in 20 minutes. I threw on jeans and a sweater and drove through the quiet streets to the hospital. St. Mary's wasn't where I worked, but I knew it well enough. I found Marcus in the waiting room. Emma curled in his lap, wrapped in a blanket, her face flushed and tear-streaked. Hey, I said softly, sitting beside them. Marcus looked at me with such relief that it hurt. Thank you for coming. I touched Emma's forehead gently. She was indeed burning up, but she managed a weak smile when she saw me. Hi, Ms. Diana, she whispered. I don't feel good. I know, sweetheart, but the doctors here are going to help you feel better. We waited together. I filled out paperwork when Marcus's hands were shaking too much. I went to get him coffee from the vending machine. I held Emma when they called her back for examination so Marcus could talk to the nurse. It was, as I'd suspected, a virus. The doctor prescribed fever reducers and rest, and sent us home with instructions to watch for any worsening symptoms. By the time we left the hospital, it was past midnight. Emma had fallen asleep against Marcus's shoulder, her fever already dropping thanks to the medication they'd given her. I don't know how to thank you, Marcus said in the parking lot. You don't have to thank me. I'm just glad she's okay. Diana, you didn't have to come. You don't owe us anything. I looked at Emma's peaceful face, flushed but sleeping now. I know I don't, but she's a good kid, Marcus, and she's been through enough. If I can help make things a little easier, I want to. Something passed between us then. Not romance, not reconciliation of our old marriage, but something else. Understanding, maybe, or the beginning of a different kind of relationship built on shared concern for this child. Can I call you? He asked. Not for emergencies necessarily, but just to update you on how she's doing? Maybe send you pictures from her school stuff? I hesitated. This was a threshold. Once I said yes, I was committing to being part of their lives in a real way, not just hypothetically. Okay, I said finally. But Marcus, I need you to understand something. I'm doing this for Emma, not for you, not to resurrect what we had. That marriage is over and I've made peace with that. I understand. And for what it's worth, I've made peace with it too. I loved Sarah. I'm not looking for anything from you except maybe friendship. Eventually, if that's possible. I think it might be, I said. Someday. Over the next several months, something unexpected happened. Emma and I developed our own relationship, separate from Marcus, separate from the past. We started meeting every other Saturday. Sometimes Marcus would drop her off at my house for a few hours while he ran errands. We'd bake cookies or work in the garden or read books. Emma loved stories. Fairy tales mostly, but also chapter books about brave girls having adventures. She told me about school, about her friends, about the boy in her class who ate glue and made everyone laugh. She told me about the days when she missed her mother so much it felt like she couldn't breathe. And I'd hold her while she cried, not trying to fix it, just being there. I told her stories about my own childhood, about my sister Rochelle, about the time I'd tried to give our cat a bath and ended up soaking wet. I taught her how to plant bulbs that would bloom in spring, how to make the perfect chocolate chip cookie, how to braid her hair in different styles, slowly, carefully. I also learned more about Marcus's transformation. I met his sponsor, Tom, a weathered man in his 60s who'd been sober for 20 years. Tom came by one Saturday when he was dropping off some books for Marcus, and we talked for a while on the porch while Emma played in the backyard. He's one of the good ones, Tom told me. Some people get sober, but they're still running from themselves. Marcus did the work, faced his demons. He's not perfect, none of us are, but he's solid. How can you be sure? I asked. How can you tell who's going to make it and who's going to relapse? You can't, not for certain, but you can see the signs. Does he go to meetings regularly? Does he have a support system? Does he deal with stress in healthy ways? Marcus checks all those boxes. And more than that, he has something to live for beyond himself. That little girl in your backyard, she's his anchor. I watched Emma examining a ladybug that had landed on her hand, her face full of wonder. She's remarkable, I said. So are you, Tom replied. Not many people would do what you're doing. Showing grace to someone who hurt them, that takes real strength. I didn't feel strong. Most days I felt uncertain, like I was walking a tightrope without a net, but I kept showing up, for Emma, and gradually, surprisingly for myself too, because something was healing in me. The bitterness I'd carried for 6 years was loosening its grip. I found myself laughing more easily, sleeping more soundly. The house that had felt too empty for so long now held Saturday afternoon baking sessions and children's laughter. Rochelle noticed the change when she visited in November. You seem different, she said, watching me frost cupcakes Emma and I had made earlier, lighter somehow. I feel different, I admitted. I didn't realize how heavy anger was until I started letting it go. So you've forgiven him? Completely? I thought about it. I don't know if forgiveness is something you achieve completely. It's more like, I'm choosing not to let what he did define the rest of my life. I'm choosing to see him as a flawed person who made terrible mistakes, but who's genuinely trying to be better. And Emma? I smiled. Emma is the easiest part. She's just a kid who needed someone to care about her. Loving her doesn't require forgiveness. It just requires showing up. On Emma's 6th birthday in November, Marcus invited me to the small party he'd organized. It was just a few kids from her class, Mrs. Patterson, Tom, and me. We gathered in Marcus's small apartment, which he'd decorated with balloons and streamers. I watched him with Emma, patient when she got overwhelmed by the noise, gentle when she got frosting on her new dress, attentive to every child's needs. This was a different man than the one I'd been married to. Or maybe this was who he'd always had the potential to be, underneath the addiction. Emma opened her presents with careful deliberation, thanking each person formally. When she got to mine, a collection of books I'd carefully selected, including some of my childhood favorites, her eyes lit up. Ms. Diana. These are perfect. She threw her arms around me and I held her close, breathing in the scent of birthday cake and children's shampoo. Later, after the other guests had left and Emma was showing Mrs. Patterson her new toys, Marcus and I cleaned up the kitchen together. Thank you for coming, he said, loading paper plates into a trash bag. It meant a lot to Emma, to both of us. I wouldn't have missed it. Diana, He paused, choosing his words carefully. I know we'll never be what we were, and I'm not asking for that, but I want you to know that having you in Emma's life, it's the greatest gift. Sarah was right. She knew you'd be exactly what Emma needed. Emma's what I needed too, I said quietly. I didn't realize how much until she was here. The house was too quiet. My life was too small. She's opened something up in me that I thought was closed forever. Marcus's eyes were bright with tears. I'm sorry. For everything I put you through. For every way I failed you. I don't expect you to say you forgive me, but I need you to know. I do, I interrupted. Forgive you. Not because you've earned it, or because enough time has passed, but because holding on to that pain was poisoning me, and because Emma deserves to have people in her life who aren't weighed down by old wounds. Marcus's composure crumbled. He leaned against the counter, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I stood there awkwardly for a moment, then stepped forward and put my hand on his shoulder. You're doing a good job with her, I said. Sarah would be proud. He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. I hope so. God, I hope so. Some days I'm terrified I'm messing everything up. That I'm not enough. You're enough. And you're not alone anymore. You have Tom. You have Mrs. Patterson. You have me. We're all here for Emma. For both of you. From the living room, we heard Emma's laughter as Mrs. Patterson pretended to be confused by one of her new toys. The sound was pure joy, untainted by grief or worry, the sound of a child being a child. She's healing, Marcus said softly, slowly, but she's healing. So are we, I replied. All of us. The months turned into a year. Emma started first grade, and I attended her school's open house alongside Marcus. Her teacher, a young woman named Miss Chen, showed us Emma's artwork covering one wall. bright paintings of flowers and houses and families. One painting caught my eye. It showed 3 figures, a tall man, a small girl with braids, and a woman with short gray hair. Underneath, in Emma's careful printing, it said, "My family. She talks about you all the time," Miss Chen said, noticing where I was looking. "Ms. Diana this, Ms. Diana that. She says you make the best cookies in the world." I felt my throat tighten. She's a special kid. She is. And she's lucky to have so many people who love her. By the time Emma's 7th birthday rolled around, our routine was established. She spent every other Saturday with me, and we talked on the phone most weeknights before bed. I attended her school performances and helped with homework when Marcus was working late. I taught her to ride a bike in my driveway, running alongside her with my hand on the seat until the moment she found her balance and pedaled away on her own, shrieking with delight. I was there the first time she lost a tooth, the second one, actually, but the first one that came out while she was with me. She was eating an apple, and suddenly there it was in her hand, and she looked at me with wide eyes, half scared, half thrilled. "Does the tooth fairy know where your house is?" she asked seriously. "I think the tooth fairy knows where all the good kids live," I assured her. That night, after Marcus picked her up, I got a text from him. "She insisted on sleeping with the tooth under her pillow at your house next time she stays over. Said the tooth fairy probably leaves better presents at your place because your house smells like magic. Just thought you should know." I laughed and cried at the same time, sitting alone in my kitchen holding my phone. The truth was, Emma had given me something I didn't know I needed. Not a second chance at motherhood. I'd never had children of my own, and that ship had sailed long ago. But a chance to pour love into someone who needed it. A chance to matter in someone's small, precious life. And in the process, I'd found something else. Forgiveness wasn't just about absolving Marcus. It was about freeing myself, about choosing to believe that people could change, that mistakes didn't have to define a lifetime, that grace was possible even in the messiest situations. One spring evening, almost 2 years after that first visit, I sat on my porch watching Emma and Marcus plant the vegetable garden we'd planned together. Emma was covered in dirt, chattering about how many tomatoes we'd have, whether we should plant pumpkins for Halloween, if carrots really made you see better in the dark. Marcus caught my eye and smiled. Not the desperate, guilty smile from that first day, but something easier, grateful, peaceful. My phone buzzed with a text from Rochelle. "Lunch next week? Want to hear more about your granddaughter, as you keep calling her?" I smiled and typed back, "She's not my granddaughter. She's just Emma." And yes, lunch sounds perfect. Because that was the thing. Emma wasn't replacing anything or fixing anything. She was just herself. A bright spot in my life that I'd never expected, but now couldn't imagine living without. As the sun set and the air grew cool, I called them inside for dinner. Emma ran ahead, leaving muddy footprints on my clean floor, and I didn't even care. Marcus helped her wash her hands at the sink while I set out plates, and we sat around my kitchen table, this makeshift family built from broken pieces and hard-won grace. Emma said grace before we ate, something Sarah had taught her. She held our hands and spoke in her clear, serious voice. "Thank you for this food, and for the people we love, and for second chances. Amen." Marcus squeezed my hand before letting go, and I squeezed back. After dinner, while Emma was absorbed in coloring at the table, Marcus helped me with the dishes. "I've been thinking about something," he said quietly. "Sarah left money for Emma, life insurance, savings, everything. It's in a trust for college. But she also left a letter for me to open on Emma's 10th birthday. I'm not supposed to read it until then, but I know what it says. She told me before she died. What does it say? She wanted me to make sure Emma knew about you. About how you chose to be in her life even though you didn't have to. She said that kind of love, chosen love, is the most powerful kind. The kind that changes everything." I wiped my eyes with the dish towel. Sarah was a wise woman. She was. And she was right. You've changed everything, Diana. For Emma, yes. But for me, too. You've shown me what real forgiveness looks like. Not just words, but action. Showing up even when it's hard. We finished the dishes in comfortable silence. When it was time for them to leave, Emma hugged me tight. "I love you, Ms. Diana," she whispered. It was the first time she'd said it out loud, though I'd felt it growing between us for months. "I love you too, sweetheart," I whispered back. I stood on my porch and watched their taillights disappear into the evening. The air smelled like fresh earth and possibility. Somewhere in the darkening sky, the first stars were appearing. Inside, my house waited, no longer too quiet, no longer too empty. Filled instead with muddy footprints and children's laughter and the echo of the words that had changed everything. Second chances. Not for the marriage that died. Not for the man who'd hurt me. But for all of us. Marcus learning to be the father he'd never had. Emma learning to live with loss and love anyway. And me learning that forgiveness wasn't about forgetting or excusing. It was about choosing to believe in tomorrow. Closing. Audience connection. So I want to ask you something. Wherever you are right now, listening to my story, have you ever had someone from your past show up and ask for forgiveness? Have you ever had to choose between the safety of your anger and the risk of grace? It's not easy. Some days I still wonder if I made the right choice. But then I think about Emma's smile, about the sound of her laughter filling my kitchen, about the way she holds my hand when we cross the street. And I know that love, real love, is always worth the risk. Would you have done what I did? Could you have opened your door to the person who hurt you most? Tell me. I'd love to know. Because we're all just trying to figure out how to live with our broken pieces, how to build something beautiful from the ruins. And sometimes, just sometimes, the most unexpected grace comes from the places we least expect it.